I think that cultivating that stillness is really important. I mean, what you're talking about is that harmonic overtone, right? I mean, if we take the note C and play it on a beautiful wooden handcrafted violin, that the harmonics are so much different than if we play the exact same C note on a plastic violin from Amazon, right? And that's what we're talking about, is how do we return to a space of harmony where there's space in between? And I think part of that means that we have to remove ourselves from some of the conveniences of modern life. We are messy, for lack of a better word. We make mistakes. We are not perfect. We don't fit in boxes. And that is what makes life happen.
Welcome to the Gamma Seeker broadcast. I have a personal hero of mine with us today, Dr. Catherine Clinton, a badass naturopath out of Oregon, who is, in my opinion, translating all of what's happening within mitochondria health, terranium health, fascia concepts, sound and quantum mechanics, quantum physics, how it's relating to the resonance within the body. And she has helped me understand fascia and its infinite complexity better. So, Dr. Catherine, thank you for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to be with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to create something together right now.
I'd like to start weaving our story around the advice that you would give to yourself at 15 years old.
That's a good question. I think that if I had to give myself advice at 15 years old, I might not give advice. I might just hold her. I might just hold her and say, you are whole, you are complete, and you are loved. You are infinitely loved. At 15, I was going through a lot, and I am wonderfully stubborn. So I'm not sure advice would have gotten me anywhere. But if someone had come up and enveloped me and held me and said, you are whole, you are perfect as you are, and you are completely and forever loved, I think that would have been what I needed at 15.
I love that, because as we move from cell biology into the electric model, we come a lot more into the conclusion that we have to regulate our nervous system with our thoughts. And our thoughts are built from how our neurons cluster together and how they bump around in our brain. So if that 15-year-old was watching right now, how would you guide them to create that space within themselves?
I would first let them know, because they were very left brain. They've very much, they still are today, really like to explore the world, very cerebral, very excited about new things. So I would get them excited about their relationship with themselves and with the world around them. And I would try to excite them and invite them into a space of awe, to remember how incredible their body is and how it is part of this magnificent web that we live in. And not only is that incredible and awe-inspiring, but it is the medicine. I now, when I was in naturopathic medical school, I was diagnosed with 2 autoimmune conditions and Lyme disease. And I had so many incredible tools at my fingertips, but it wasn't until I understood that the rising and setting of the sun is a visit from a loved one, that the ground beneath my feet holds and nourishes me, that the tree outside my window is a forever friend. It wasn't just circadian biology and grounding and all these things. It's a relationship. So I would try to invite that 15-year-old into a relationship with the world around them. And I would know as a 49-year-old that that is the medicine. Yes, getting morning sunlight. I mean, we could go on and on about the science of all these things, but really, when you cross that line from the science to the relationship, that's where true healing lies. So if that 15-year-old could be introduced and initiated into a relationship with the world around them, I would be forever grateful that I didn't have to wait so decades and decades to get that relationship.
It's funny you say that. When I was 15, I spent a whole month living outside. It was a summer actually, so 3 months. My parents had a tiny shed with like screened enclosures. So down in Florida, we have a lot of mosquitoes and insects. So it was like a safe way to kind of be outside overnight. And when you said all of that, I was like, wow, the relationship with nature can really steer us into self awareness. And I feel that the inner awareness is something as a coach, I'm always trying to build people. Like, I don't want you to just follow the sequence. I want the sequence to help you dive into the body so that we can see where the tension is, identify the tension, and then work with it to create freedom. So I love that you're in that concept of how do we build the awareness and the connection to the world around us. And both you and I have a love of sound. And when I think of being connected to the world around us, I often think of the fascia outside of the body, the sound waves and the pressure waves that can move this unseen energy. Can you talk to me a little bit about sound and how you feel about it? And again, we're just talking to that 15-year-old girl in my head right now.
Great question. I too love sound, and I've started to see all of it. Light, sound, electricity, magnetism, the biofield as vibration, information, and energy as this way to not only transfer information, but to transfer energy and really the backdrop of life. And forever changed by the understanding that really this is all waves. You know, we talk about electrons and protons and photons of light like they're billiard balls on a pool table. But really, these are all waves, and we are all waves. And the geometric patterns that we show up as these material beings are a product of this wave information. And when you start to look at it that way, you can kind of see this universal flow of wave information that comes into our planetary environment and terrain and flows through every plant, every animal, every human being. And so this idea of sound as this continuum of vibratory information that can move through our material being, because we are waves as well. We are waves of energy. And it really, for me, highlights how interconnected we all are, and that we don't stop at the barriers of our skin. We are intimately connected with the world around us. And to me, that's so exciting because it inspires this incredible vision of the body while instilling a responsibility. The planet that I live on, the plants outside my window, the animals, the people in my community, I am them. We're all in this together, and it's really time that we understand that tending to our personal health is an act of community care, and caring for our community is an act of personal care. There is a massive blur in these individual lines that we set up between person and plant and animal and the other. When I was in college, I graduated my undergrad degree in philosophy, and I loved the Jewish philosophy of the other and how we are constantly othering and separating where there is no separation. And so I think that's what sound teaches us, is this beautiful interconnection that we have with everything around us.
Sorry, baby. I have a question for you before this other question, and I want to kind of just drop into it. A lot of people think of health right now as just diet and lifestyle and exercise. And I know that you and I have a different approach to what health is. It's not just these little actions, this little vitamin that you take before you go to work. So how would you describe health?
I agree. It isn't these external inputs. It really is being embedded in that flow of energy. And modern life has done an incredible job at putting up obstacles to being in the flow of that universal energy that we're talking about, right? Living in our houses in temperature controlled environments. We live 70 degrees year in, year out, whether it's summertime and air conditioning or the winter with heating. We go from that to a car to another temperature controlled lighting controlled with artificial lighting. All of these things separate us from this flow of energy, from this flow of, and we can call it whatever we want, electricity, magnetism. Really what those are excitations in this flow of energy, these waves of energy and information that inundate our environment and flow through the environment and us. And so when I speak of health, when I look at patients and assess their health, I'm assessing where can we reconnect them to that flow? How can we embed them further into that flow? And what obstacles do they have acting as a barrier to that flow? We can talk about fascia. We can talk about their relationship with nature. We can talk about their subconscious train of thought, lighting, their rhythms, their ability to weather the seasons. Do you get cold in winter? Do you live somewhere cold and not experience cold? Do you live somewhere hot and not sweat on a hot day, experiencing that heat? All of these things are being embedded in this incredible flow of information. And we can go, we can call it information, we can call it ether, we can call it the divine, we can call it God consciousness, so many different names. But to me, that's where vitality comes from. And this is nothing new, right? Like ancient indigenous cultures have spoke of this being enveloped and a part of this cosmic energy. And that's where health comes from. And what is acting as an obstacle? Is it your relationships? Yeah, I mean, so many things we could go into, but that's how I assess health. Is that person in contact, embedded in that flow of energy? Or are there obstacles acting as barriers to the flow? And how can we remove them and further surround them in this ocean of energy that exists?
Health is such a complex thing, isn't it? There's so many strands of it. It's so
Mhm.
much bigger than just one little supplement. And I fear right now in the wellness industry, there's just, as the industry itself grows, there's a lot of, you need this supplement. This supplement will change everything. And I continue to bring on doctors like yourself and researchers and experimenters that are like continually saying we have what we need from inside, and it's about becoming aware and accessing the tools that are latent within us to create that sense of harmony. And I love the word enthusiasm. To me, if somebody was like, okay, what is health? I love enthusiasm. And enthusiasm by definition means possession by God, which is, can make people feel a certain way. But I experience it as like the faucet of energy. And as an artist, this faucet of energy has shifted. So like what used to give me energy, I woke up one day and it no longer, my sport no longer gave back to me. And I felt like I needed to reshift everything that I was, all of my neuron clusters, to envelop a whole new identity. And then when that came to a close, I needed to again step inside of another reality and rebuild. And I think that navigating health is not just a static one position, like you do these one things and then you exhibit it forever. I think that health is a complex symphony of you showing up how you need to serve your purpose. And it's not going to be the cookie cutter the same, but if we have our gear, like if inside of a car, if you have, you have your steering wheel and you have your gear shift. And to me, the steering wheel and the gear shift are our breath rate and our fascia tension. And if we're doing body scans while we're learning new information, while we're meeting someone new, our fascia, I believe, can respond to stress that's not even really present. It can respond to tension. It's the resonant component of when, how sensitives and empaths talk about, like, well, I can feel this coming off the field. And I think everyone could perceive an angry person. Angry person hustles through the room. There's this, like, if we were dogs, the hair would stick up on the back of our, it's that feeling that I think the fascia responds to from this delicate balance. And when I would say I'm most locked into my health, I have the maximum amount of enthusiasm. That's how I would kind of dial it in for it, And there's so many different things that we have to keep in alignment in order to feel that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I have really been excited and enthusiastic about this idea of coherence and exactly what you're talking about, that flow, that enthusiasm, that outward energy where you want to share your authentic truth. I think that is where health comes from. I don't know if you know this, Brooke, but I've partnered with the research laboratory at UC San Diego to do heart coherence research on mitochondria and to see the effects. We're just now onboarding. We have 10 people doing the research. We're trying to get 30 people to do it. This practice of heart coherence, this idea of how enthusiasm and gratitude can change that internal terrain, can change the energy flow in the body, and thus the energy flow in the mitochondria. I think that is one of the most beautiful things that I've found about quantum biology is this idea of coherence. In fact, that's what got me so excited about quantum biology, was finding some of the early research studies where they were looking at photosynthetic bacteria and how a photon of light gets to the photoreactive center for photosynthesis. And yes, it quantum tunnels and it takes multiple paths because it's a particle and it's a wave, and that's all exciting. We've never seen that in a living thing. But was most exciting to me was that the proteins in that bacterium vibrated in unison. They created what these researchers call the quantum beat, or a vibration that kept that photon on its fastest path. And to me, immediately reading that, I was like, well, how did they know?
What informs it?
Yes, there is this intelligence, this invisible intelligence or blueprint of life that creates this beat and this vibration so that life can exist. And I think we can take that all the way out to the other day. I was leading a class and someone said, it was a trauma class, and someone said, what would you say to people who are incarcerated and don't have access sometimes to, even the rising and setting of the sun or the ground beneath their feet? What would you say to them? How can they navigate health? And I came back to this idea of coherence, and that we are messy humans. We are chaotic. We are messy, for lack of a better word. We make mistakes. We are not perfect. We don't fit in boxes. And that is what makes life happen. When they were looking at this research that I'm talking about, all the other quantum physicists were like, absolutely no way. That can't happen. There can't be quantum phenomenon in a living system. It's too messy. It's too wet. It's too noisy. But that was what created the perfect backdrop. Our messy lives, our imperfections, that is our beauty. And that is the backdrop of what makes us human, what makes us here and alive. And even if we are living in a cell and we don't have access to anything but our internal environment and our thoughts and our feelings. And even if those feelings are anger and frustration and grief and rage, if we are present with ourselves, as long as we're not turning that anger onto someone else or suppressing that grief, if we are flowing with that feeling, even if it's a negative feeling, the mess of being a human is what creates life. And it is life-giving. It is what creates health, what creates life, vitality. And so I think this idea of coherence is so empowering. And it isn't what I love Heart Math Institute, and they are absolutely incredible and a pioneer. But this idea that we have to be in a state of gratitude or love or joy to experience coherence, I think is a misunderstanding. I think we have to be present with our emotions. And if we are a mess and we can be authentically a mess, that is medicine and that is life affirming and that is allowing our body to do all of these incredible things that keep us alive.
I loved everything that you just said, and I am 1000% with you. I love the word mighty. When I tell people, like, my programs are not to make you one way or another, it's to make you feel mighty in your field. Because, like, our charisma is not like a supplement that you take, it's an energy that you bring into an environment, and to charge your enthusiasm, to charge your biofield. I've had the chance to rub shoulders with a lot of pro athletes, and you can feel it when they're 80 feet away from you. You can sense that they know who they are, that they are fully present and aware, and they come to dominate. And it's kind of funny because if you picture like a murderer or a psychopath, you could kind of say, like, wow, they probably existed in their field with this rage that they carried with them, and they existed in that reality. And I see that in performing artists and athletes, where they have created such an energy that there's like people in events that move around their presence. And that sensation, I think many people are looking for in the wellness industry. And they think it comes from a body type, or they think it comes from, eating a certain way. And it's really this charge of coherence. Now, this podcast is called Gamma Seeker. And I think that gamma, because we're not tapping into it as Americans and maintaining it very long, is a coherent, resonant field. And now I'm going to speak like a musician real quick. When I dong a bell, right, that bell is going to reverberate. And as long as that bell or bowl is tuned well, those different sine waves are going to continue to move around and then create these tones. And I love the Heart Math Institute. And I see that the heart is this giant magnet, that the brain is the electrical center, right? And when I think of the full field, a lot of people can't just like control their mind or control their heart rate. But our heart rate mirrors a lot our breath rate. There's a total correlation. So if I increase my breath rate, my heart rate increases. Brain waves, I think, show up in the fascia tension. So if someone is in high beta, the fascia tension and the nervous system is going to reflect that same tension. So I have a theory that if we drop the breath rate to 4 breaths a minute for more than 4 minutes, right? So like at least 4 minutes, and we have a flowing fascia. So an electrical tower that is free of impingement, there's no stagnation, we've taken in our electrons for the day. When we maintain those inputs, now we're dealing with a brain ready to 4 breaths a minute is going to drop the heart rate. That's going to lock into a slower brainwave pattern. The brainwave pattern, most ideally, in my opinion, is theta, because of the theta gamma sync. So 4 breaths a minute comes from that low end of theta, that 4 to 7 hertz. So when we play with the two inputs that we can actually control, like we can actually train breath rate, we can train our fascia tension. When those things are there, and then we've also empowered our charge, I think that's the space that we're going to be able to pull gamma through theta. So I think a lot of people think of gamma as, oh, it's 31 to 100, so we have to like figure out how to handle even more stimulation. And I think it's about being so chill, so calm, so fluid, that we can absorb the symphony of the creative power around us. How does that feel for you?
Yeah, I would say, to me, when you're talking, that is this entrainment of vibration, right? You're talking about the hertz of breath, the vibratory capacity of fascia, the ability of our brain waves to entrain, to act as this field of entrainment, our heart, all of these things are those vibratory fields that bring everything into unison like a symphony, right? All of these things are different instruments creating this beautiful song of life in the body. So I think what you're saying is exactly that, that we need to tune our various instruments to create this beautiful song. And the tools you're talking about are at our fingertips. We can all do that wherever we are.
I love that. What are you in? There's two questions I want to ask, actually. So let me ask this one first. Have you spent an extended period of time living outside at all? Like a few weeks or a month or, okay. Did you
Yeah.
have that feeling when I did a year in a teepee and my skin changed. And every time I walked inside, I felt like I was in stagnant air. And my ears changed, my eyes changed. There was a lot of shifts within my nervous system. I wanted to know if you've had that experience at all too.
Yes, absolutely. And it's one of the reasons my husband makes fun of me because it can be snowing outside and I have to have the windows open, especially when I sleep. I just need that connection because of that stagnation that you're talking about is really, the experience was like boosting that antenna and you're able to receive all this information and then you go in this stagnant environment and you crave that radio signal, right? Like open the windows, do whatever it takes to get me back to that signal. And I think that's how we evolved. I think that's what we're supposed to be living in, is that rich environment of all of it, of the light, of the electric air all around us, right? That ether, that plasma, holding that energy, every breath as this dance we take with that energy all around us, the sights, the sounds, all of it. And as we talked about before, modern life is just completely removed from that. And it's no wonder that we have an epidemic of not only physical disease, but mental health, right? That's where our sense of belonging, our sense of contentment and peace comes from, is being in that flow of energy and receiving that energy that's all around us. And when we're cut off, it doesn't feel good.
That's so cool. Many people haven't had that long distance, like long extended time outside, and it changed my life. Doing a year outside, my parents joke that I've never returned from the teepee because it feels divine. Like
Mhm.
the space that nature creates between things is harmonious. And when we think of like a big, beautiful church, whatever, or temple, whatever that would look like for someone, there is very specific structure. And when we look at that divine ratio, right? I'm like a huge fan of Leonardo da Vinci, and he like has this epic journey of traveling to get this book. In this book, he had, everybody back then read in 4 or 5 different languages, because if you could read, it doesn't mean that you could read in the language that you had. And the Vitruvian Man, the famous Leonardo da Vinci Vitruvian Man, to find the perfect ratio, he was studying a philosopher that was trying to divine the perfect ratio of humanity and like how to build a sculpture, right? And he takes this epic voyage, and we have just the ability to go to a library, go to a bookstore, order it on Amazon. And when we think of this perfect ratio in our life, there's gaps, there's spaces, there's things in between. And what I see a lot in our culture right now is this overstimulating pressure of too many things without enough stillness, without enough silence, without enough self-reflection in between it. And I know that you have a few kids, so I was wondering how you create and encourage that space for people to come to their own divine conclusions with things.
I love that because I completely agree. Everything is stuffed, right? Everything in our modern life is stuffed from the second our alarm clock goes off. We don't have alarm clocks here. We better get that circadian rhythm down or we miss events. And I think that cultivating that stillness is really important. I mean, what you're talking about is that harmonic overtone, right? I mean, if we take the note C and play it on a beautiful wooden handcrafted violin, that the harmonics are so much different than if we play the exact same C note on a plastic violin from Amazon, right? And that's what we're talking about, is how do we return to a space of harmony where there's space in between? And I think part of that means that we have to remove ourselves from some of the conveniences of modern life. Right before we started recording, I said to my 15-year-old, no screens today, and that's one of the things we do. Go outside, be silent. And with my kids, it looks like this sort of angst, like, can't we do this? Can't we? No, no, nope. I'm so bored. And then phew, that all bursts away. And they're doing the most creative thing. It's like this buildup of, give me my convenience. I want to do screens. I want to do this. And then all of a sudden they have that space in between, and they are writing. My son was writing a play the other day. My daughter, a comic book. I mean, these incredible things happen in the space between. And I think that's where health happens too. We have been saying throughout this podcast, it isn't a pill. It isn't a thing. It isn't a switch that we turn on. It's a space that we create in our life for that harmony to come in, whether that's a relationship, a train of thought, the entrainment of the breath and the fascia. It's a space that we create, a harmony. And I think we're starved for that. Like you said, back in Da Vinci's day, people would go out to these concerts and hear all these harmonic overtures. That music would imprint on the waters of the body, which imprint on the fascia, which imprint on the breath and the brain waves, and create this harmony. This harmonic overtone where we have space in between, and we don't have that anymore. We are crammed with our thoughts, with this. We have to produce. Our worth is on what we produce. And really, from a different perspective, we could say that our worth is from the space we create in our life, because that's where it comes from.
Oh, I really like that. I've been thinking all day about value and how so many women right now are placing value on how they look. And they're really not taking it to that next level. And I really feel women guide the culture. Men want to make us happy. They want to protect us. They want to, give us our little pretty trinkets that we want. And so if a woman wants chickens, they're going to get chickens. If a woman wants, fake boobs, they're going to get fake boobs. So we're steering where, a lot of the money goes. Like a woman is the majority buyer, the majority consumer for their children, for their husbands. So there is this penchant of, how do we create value? And what you just said there is so beautiful. We create value by the space that we hold. And I'm so lucky to have women in my friend group that span a decade younger to 2 decades older. All of us considering each other peers, just soul sisters, remembering each other and feeling safe in the expanding consciousness. And so many of my older girlfriends, I'm about to be 35 this month, and I have some beautiful women in my life that are about to turn 50, and they are just confused. They're like, I can't believe I'm going to be 50. And it's just like, you look beautiful. And their concern is all physical. It's all physical. It's not a celebration of the wisdom that they have gathered, like who they are as I see them. The way that they're comparing themselves is in this shallow, vain mindset that's coming from a culture that I think really needs to be audited in a nice, gentle way. And I don't know how to do that. Like, how do you create conversations around beauty? Because beauty is such a core principle of art, of nature, of love. And I define beauty as being what you are meant to be. Beauty is not a one size fits all. It's not a big lips, big booty, big booby. Beauty is a space. Like, what a great thing that you just created for me. Thank you for answering that little philosophically. That question has been bouncing around in my head. And it's the space that we hold is palpable. You
Mhm.
know, our most beloved friends, it's not because of the gifts they bring us or the meals that they've cooked for us. It's because of how we feel in their presence. Can you riff on that? That's just blowing my mind in such a nice way right now.
Yeah, well, I'm next year I'll be 50. And I think that I love it. I love it because at this age, I have more capacity to hold space. I am fierce about my space. I love being able to hold space for myself, for other people. I feel that I don't have those cares that I had at 30 and in my 20s about, oh, I have to look this way and that way. And I said this, and what do they think about that? This is me, and I fucking love it, and I'm ready to own it, and I'm ready to create space for it, because when I can create that space, then other people feel comfortable in their space, right? If we're all shrinking and looking, and what do we do, and how do I fit in? You know, fit into what? What are we fitting into? We already fit in. We are radiating this magnificent light and energy. And that's our only duty, is to own that and to do that and to act as an example for other people to feel safe in their own space. There's such a lack of safety in this society. I have never, ever seen a patient, and I see a lot of autoimmune patients, a lot of GI patients. I've never seen anyone who didn't have a lack of safety or a lack of a sense of a belonging, right? And what does a person who holds their space, who holds authenticity do? They radiate that it's okay to be you. It's okay. It's not only okay, it's necessary. Going back to that idea of coherence and noise creating the backdrop of life, if we mute our noise, if we dim our light, then essentially we're just, extinguishing that life-giving force. I love the age that I'm at, and I love the ability to own it that I didn't have in my younger years, because I was so concerned about what other people thought, and this people pleasing mode that I was in. And now I know that I'm not here to please people. I'm here to be me. I'm here to shine my light, and hopefully someone else sees that and feels okay doing the same thing. And the more people that do that, the more we can deepen this sense of coherence. And just like you talk about the breath and the fascia and the brain waves coming in alignment and coming in coherence and building that wave, that energy, so too can we as a society, when we build that coherence with ourselves and we pull in other people to build that coherence, and that coherence deepens and it expands and it infiltrates other people, and it is contagious. And think of what the world would be like if that was the basis for health, if that was the basis for worth, right? Instead of like, what do you look like? How
Right.
productive are you? What do you
How nice
have?
was how good does your field feel? You
Yeah.
know, I often tell people this, like, when you go on vacation, you really get to know people because you get to see their imprint on like a space. And I always tell myself, I'm like, if you just watch how someone leaves a room, leaves a space that they've been existing in, for a few days, right? You can kind of pick up on their imprint, their pattern. And I always challenge myself to leave a space more beautiful than when I arrived. And I can't stop myself in a public restroom. If there's just like a few paper towels on the floor while I'm cleaning my hands with that paper towel, I'll pick them up and put them away, because I want to make the world in my wake, I want my wake to be full of angels and fairies, you know? And in all my studies, I have found that angels love structure. They love organization. And so many of the feng shui masters, so many of the energy masters talk about order in, like, I have this word, it's called casita. So a casa is a house and a casita is a little house. So it's like, there's a French word too for like everything in its place. So it's like everything needs to go to its little casita, because if we're all energy, then even the things in my house, the tchotchkes in my house, have a vibration to it that can pull me back to a certain frequency. And a friend of mine is a death doula, per se. Like they're in Sweden. They were able to do the injections, and they shared with me some crazy stories about when the soul departs, that there's this flash of energy, and the energy will circle around trinkets. And he's like, I learned so much. And he's like, I can always tell when their soul leaves. And sometimes it takes 30 seconds, sometimes it's 30 minutes, sometimes it's an hour. And he's like, I'll ask the family, like, what did, these little glasses mean? Or what did this little Hot Wheel car mean? And it's always our love of the person. It's this attachment that we have. These tiny trinkets, these little vibrations that we collect around us contain, I think, part of our brain mapping, like how our neurons pair each other together. So when I have a little Aphrodite trinket, like a little Egyptian trinket, right? And it's just a trinket to someone else. But for me, it's a symbol of all of these things I've learned about Egyptian culture. It's a symbol of this ancient thought and theory of who we were as embodied gods, as just a vessel, as just a tube of hollow light that is way more infinite and eternal than we give credit for. And as we go through these different transformations, here I thought we were going to have a science conversation. I feel like this is the most relevant conversation about health, because health is only what we're able to produce and bring out of ourselves. And it shows up everywhere around us. And as we breathe into, and in my opinion, the destruction of cell biology and the birth of the electric model, how do we bring people with us? Like, what's the domino that could help us realign with the fact, and this may be an impossible question, but let's try it together. What would be the domino if we could push it, where we could expand, open our minds to this wave, this frequency, this other state of being that exists around us all the time?
That's a great question. And I think the domino that I try to push for people is this language of frequency in the body. We're so used to looking at a chemical mechanical model, right? If something happens in the body, it's because of mechanical alignment, because the body is a machine, kind of like gears in a machine, and all the gears have to align. We know that's true. No denying that. But there's more, just like a chemical model that I inject B12 into my deltoid and it has to chemically diffuse throughout my body. And this idea of random collision where a molecule or key, a biological key like vitamin B, needs to ricochet and randomly collide throughout a cell until it reaches its receptor and unlocks that receptor and action happens. We know that happens, but there's more. There is this language of frequency in the body where two proteins and the water that lines them, right? That easy water that comes against their surface and has a different structure. It's able to capture this energy information, this frequency information, capture it, store it, and amplify it so that it becomes the dominant frequency. And like two tuning forks, those proteins can communicate with vibration, with frequency, with resonance. And we see this from so many different researchers. And if I could push a domino, it would be for people to understand that even though we can't see it, we can measure it and we can appreciate it. We have, as humans, have appreciated this language of frequency since the very beginning, this understanding of this unseen energy. And once we can do that, once we can look at the body as an electric being, as a biofield of energies, as a vessel for this unseen, invisible intelligence, not only can we have health at a much faster, much more efficient rate than chemical diffusion or mechanical alignment, but we can start to appreciate what we're talking about here, about coherence in our body and coherence in our relationships and our communities and our society. We can care about what we do in a region thousands of miles from somewhere else because they're connected. This almost instantaneous communication that happens between non-local pieces is real. And it's so important that we grasp that, not only for our health, but the direction of society overall. So if I had to push a domino, it would be that we recognize this language of frequency, that we expand on that chemical mechanical model and understand that we can communicate with this vibratory information like two tuning forks, or you go into a musical store and you press one B note on a piano and a piano across the shop that's open reverberates and plays that same note. It's that language of vibration, of sound, of waves of energy, and it holds the key to our health. And I think it holds the key to a transition in the way that we interact as humans that's desperately needed right now.
And that's why we're so grateful you're educating. So not only are you having clients and being a doctor, but you're also, you really, in my opinion, pioneering how we can break down and synthesize this. And I got to tell you, you are tremendously more fun to listen to than many of the other fascia researchers. And then still, I'm like the one who does the pictures. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, if I can listen to doctors, but I'm always like, I wish there was more pictures. So when I talk to people, I'm like, here's a picture. Here's a picture. Just trying to make this new educational model more fun and exciting, and kind of sets me up for my next question for you is, what is making you stand in awe right now?
I think, yeah, geez. I mean, I could come up with a list of things from, we were at the river the other day and a fly landed on my knee and I watched the fly clean its wings. And it was the most incredible thing ever. I think that the exercise of finding awe is so incredibly invigorating. It is what enlivens us as humans. And I can find awe in the breeze through the trees, quite literally. I mean, I went to a festival this last weekend and just laid and looked at the tree leaves for hours. But I think that in my research and what I'm doing, what really brings me a sense of awe is this idea of coherence, because it's what makes the smallest subatomic reactions happen. And it's also how a group of meditation practitioners, seasoned meditation practitioners, can change the rate of wartime violence, right? It's how we change the trajectory of society and where we're headed. And for me right now, coherence is what is just blowing my mind, whether it is the coherence that these coherent domains in water that can trap electromagnetic frequency and information, or whether it's the coherence of vibration through the entrainment of sound and fascia and breath and brain waves. All of it is just this incredible example of what it is to be alive, what life is. We've separated it into boxes and this is this and this is that, and they don't have anything to do with each other. Well, yes, they do. They are so connected. It's all connected, and it's incredibly awe-inspiring for me.
That's so beautiful. I'm familiar with the water studies that you're talking about. I'm a little blown away. I really thought that some of those easy water to me always needed some sort of surface to create it, and the fact that there's these little bubbles of it almost can kind of correlate to people and culture and communities.
Yeah. Yeah.
How does a system organize? And often I think that like one powerful person can build a small team, and then a small team can create a massive movement, because I think everything worthy in life comes from teams. It's never singular. It's always, if a poet created the idea, that's great, but it's, the people that were influenced by that poet that creates a movement or a framework of thought. And right now, so many more people are open to how our thought frameworks actually move us through our reality. And when people are like, oh, law of attraction, it's like, yeah, that's how our brain is built. Neuroscience, it's how our neurons organize themselves and structure themselves all has to do with our constant thoughts. So when we go through a breakup, we have this incredible opportunity to destroy all of the good memories that we had with that person by vilifying them. And then in the future, every time we're triggered from their memory, we now have this negative feeling versus having these like beautiful endings and new beginnings where it's like, this is no longer serving me. Thank you so much for this. I'm going to take all of the good and I'm going to remember this from a state of like, thank you for all of the lessons. I promise I will remember them and move forward with grace. But now every time that person is triggered in our memory, we don't have to have this spastic negative response. And what the woo-woo framework that people are dismissing or are open to is just standard neuroscience and how we're built. And I just feel like there's such power learning about how this amazing instrument is constructed. And thank you for sharing your thoughts on coherence. And I'm so excited that you're about to endeavor on a new research and an experiment. I can't wait to hear all about it. Want a front row seat to it for sure. We are in our last few minutes, so I would love to give you an opportunity to say anything that you wish you could have said, and also inform people how they can learn from you, work with you, and that information.
Absolutely. I think what you're saying about neuroscience is so true, right? This idea of vilifying the other. Also pain, right? Pain works in that way. We stub our toe, we have that stimulus, it travels up through our dorsal root and it goes to the emotional centers and the prefrontal cortex, and that can work in reverse so that when we're in that sympathetic dominant state, we can activate that emotional state and feel that sense of pain even when there's no stimulus there. And I think what you're doing is incredible work. I think this idea of coherent domains and creating a ripple and a team that ripples out and creates a movement, that's why we're here. And when you said, angels love order, I immediately thought, well, angels love authenticity too, right? I was speaking with Diane Powell from the telepathy tapes a month or so ago, interviewing her, and she speaks. I asked her, because in her work with nonverbal autistic community, they meet on the hill and they psychically meet on this hill and interact and have a place to be, a community. And this is a hill that doesn't exist in our reality. So a nonverbal autistic person in Texas and one in Florida can meet on the hill and converse and interact and have a sense of belonging. And when you talk to these people about who's on the hill, well, it's a bunch of this nonverbal autistic community because they've learned this telepathic way. They've honed this sense of communication because they don't have that verbal ability to speak. But what they also talk about is angels, right? There's angels on the hill. And she mentioned, well, the angels are always protecting these nonverbal autistic people, and the autists is what they call themselves. And I I said, well, how do they know when someone has that capacity? And she said, they can see the angels. They'd be able to see your angels because it's authenticity that brings those angels into our lives to protect us. And so I think for anyone listening out there, I think this conversation has been an invitation to be who you are, to shine your light, and maybe to know that there is protection in that. And so thank you for having me on today.
Yeah, that strikes a deep chord, babe. And what a powerful thing to be called towards. You know, like being in a state of love or being in a state of gratitude is like you can kind of fabricate it in a way. I can think about my dog. I can think about, my parents. And to be authentic is like a brave endeavor in a world that loves conformity.
Yeah.
I'm honored and privileged to have your time. I really thought we were going to have a deeply scientific conversation, but instead I think we stayed in a very soulful place, which I think I needed right now. I think that's what the world needs. Is health is an inside job. And you and I have been beating the same drums, like go outside, put your feet on the ground, take care of your fascia. There's 100 ways to do it. But when they dial in those inputs, we still have a mind and we still have a soul. And I have the framework of archetypes. I love the archetypes, and it's a blend of astrology and personality, and becomes this equation of how we can, once we're stable, once we're feeling that enthusiasm, where are we supposed to direct it into the world? And I think that's what we really centered on today, is how do we direct this beautiful, vibrant energy that we're busy creating in ourselves? And it's an inside job, and there's no cookie cutter way around it. So thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your treasure nuggets. I will let you go. Are you going to be at the Fascia Congress by chance?
No, I have another engagement at that time. Otherwise, I would be. Are you going to go?
I am. I'm excited. It'll be my first year. So I know at some point you and I will meet each other in a retreat. But thank you for your time today, Dr. Catherine Clinton. And what's your website that people can look you up? And some of your classes, I've taken her workshops and they're fantastic. What is your website?
It's drcatherineclinton.com. I didn't really get creative, so that's my website. That's my handle on Instagram and YouTube and Facebook, just Dr. Catherine Clinton.